sniffle and cry throughout. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Right.
All right, right in. Karaoke dreams. Yeah, so I'm going to start. We're both from the Midwest. We're both Vietnamese. You're from Indiana. I'm from Wisconsin. I'm going to start with the most like un-Midwestern thing, which is, how are you?
Well, first I just want to say big ups to Boston Asian American Film Festival for having me out here, y'all for attending the screening, and thank you, Anna Marita, doing the Q&A. How am I? It's always a little bit of a trip to sit with an audience and and hear a response and reaction and see myself also get a little get a little emotional watching some of the stuff, but I'm good. I feel really good.
And what are some questions that you're still chewing on from the work since then? I know all of us want like the big update, like what's been happening, but yeah, what have you been chewing on since?
Oh, questions that I've been chewing on. Yeah, I mean, there's so I solved the mystery. It's a trip. Today's the 19th, right? So 2 years ago, this time I was in Vietnam, and yeah, literally 2 years ago. That's when I some of the footage that you see, like going to the cemeteries and being at the temple and being in Bù Mét Thuật and meeting my half brother Bob. And so that was just 2 years ago, and then when I came back to the Bay, Oakland, meeting my new sister Tran, and so it's a trip because it's still pretty fresh, and in some ways I feel like I'm still trying to learn more about who my father is, and I only actually still have only a handful of photos of him, and so I'd like to hopefully be able to find more photos. One thing I don't share in the film is that one of the things that he did, to pay the bills and his bread and butter job was he was quite active at that temple, and I learned that after I left the temple, that some of the calligraphy on the walls he painted, and then also I don't know the term in Vietnamese, but when folks were on their deathbed, he would come and do their Buddhist rites and the such, and so that was like one of the things that he did. And he was also like an MC at weddings. That's one of the photos I have of him when he was younger, was of him emceeing a wedding. And so because he passed away in 2015, which was only 10 years ago, I was like, maybe there's video of him emceeing, but I haven't came across any of that. In addition to Z's family living in the States, I now know I have 2 other aunts that live in America. One of the aunts, the door might still be open to talking to. I haven't reached out to her yet, but yeah, so I haven't, a lot of times people ask, like, are you in contact with Z, or what's up with that? And since she told me to leave them alone, I have just respected them, and I haven't been in contact with them. So those are more answers than questions, but yeah.
I love it. Those are all great updates, and if you do, no, I want to switch it up. You want to switch it? Okay.
Oh, here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If you do get that footage of your dad emceeing, please update all of us. I think we'd love that.
Mm-hmm.
I can only imagine the stamina and fortitude going on this journey it's taken, on top of making a documentary about it all. For the artists in the room, we're super curious just what kind of commitments you made to yourself in going on that journey and making this work.
Yeah. So I try to be pretty religious, not like in a religious, like going to church kind of way, but like religious just in terms of the search, and what you all are Saul is very much the journey that I went on. Like, Z being like, why don't you go try to go deeper with your moms? I went back to Indiana to have that conversation with her. And so I was just very much, following one lead after the other. And when I hit that roadblock of like Z telling me like leave us alone, I didn't know what I was going to do, and I had paid for a 6-month membership on Ancestry. Like that's one of the my DNA is actually on 5 databases, but the 2 main ones that I did with my cousin Dale was Ancestry and 23andMe. And I had paid for a 6-month all-access membership. And on Ancestry, there's military records, there's immigration records, there's newspaper clippings. It can be pretty robust. And like y'all might not have caught it, but like Lynn was one of those 3 girl cousins at the beginning that shared like what the rumor that they heard. And during that time, because I grew up with her, they're like my brothers and sisters. We all came to the States together. I always knew that. I didn't always know, but later on in life, finding out that she's actually like wasn't my uncle and aunt's full-blooded kid. So I her and I have had conversations about how like our stories are similar, and so when I hit that roadblock, I was like, oh I got this Ancestry membership. Maybe I can help out my cousin Lynn. And so I shot that footage of Selena and Lynn, hugging and then having the conversation. And I actually thought that's how I was going to end the movie, because I was end with my kind of crappy or my voiceover saying something about like, oh, maybe one day I can hope for what they have achieved. And so then I went and saw my cousin Tal, which is actually one of Lynn's younger sisters, and she's my Oprah. She's the one that's like, don't let their no be the no. And I was like, okay, all right, I'll keep on trying to. I don't know what I'm gonna do, but yeah, and I was also in therapy during that time. Like I said, I went into depression, and being in therapy, my therapist helped me kind of realize that like even though I was trying to fill this void that I feel like I was born into this loss of not knowing who my pops was, with the journey I was going on, and then also as a filmmaker documenting it, the therapist helped me realize that like, you have a lot of love, like she didn't tell me that, but like through our process, like I was like, oh shit, like I do have like my mom's, even in her own way, there was some major breakthroughs that happened, and then I had like my cousins, even my cousin Dale being down. I was really nervous to call him and ask him to take a DNA test because I was afraid of rejection and such. But yeah, it also helped that I was successful in getting funding, and that helped make a difference to keep on going on the search because I had money to help me do it.
Yeah, so there's a lot of not just commitments to you, but you kind of expanded that circle to include your cousin too in her search and others. It sounds like also that's beautiful.
And then finding Kyle Lay on the internet and him being interested in, or not only interested, but being, that's one of the things, if you were to look up Kyle Lay on YouTube, he has what he calls family reunion documentaries on YouTube, and they have millions of views, and that's very much like how I found him, and I just saw him last week. I screened in Orange County, and he came out for that from Vietnam, and he grew up in Orange County, and so it was like, and his mom was at the screening, and so it was, without him as well, he was instrumental in helping me solve the mystery, especially my terrible Vietnamese and such. And so,
I remember actually we were messaging around that time.
Yeah, 2 years ago, because you were abroad. Yeah.
Yeah, I was also in Asia, and I was like, well, maybe this Facebook group will help. But all to say, there's a lot of us in the diaspora who are looking for family members and trying to find ways in. So it's amazing that you were able to find Kyle, who's bilingual and kind of knows how to traverse those different cultural mores. I am curious because on the one hand, a lot of how far you could get relied on the willingness of others to cooperate with you. There's also DNA results, subscriptions, phone numbers, Facebook, etc. And at the same time, as a viewer, I really saw it as a hero's journey. Tony, you've been through a lot. Whether that was also with the help of therapy and loved ones, you didn't do it alone. I'm so curious, you weren't just done too, you were also making choices to continue your story. Curious how you see yourself in this all. Short question.
Sorry. What do I see? Well, so the film has had like a few different titles. So initially, my first grant that I received, I got it from the Center for Asian American Media, and at that point, the film was called "Who Loves You, Tony Nguyen." And so it stayed "Who Loves You, Tony Nguyen" for maybe a couple of years, and then I don't know if any of y'all caught it, but like my Vietnamese nickname is B, and that's what my family called, like my cousins and my younger sister Kimberly and others. My mother, there's a family joke is that my mom couldn't pronounce baby, and so she just shortened it to B. But I don't think that's not true. So then the title was changed to B. And so that stayed the title for maybe a couple of years. I worked on this project, this film for 5 years, and then as I got into post and in terms of editing towards a assembly and a rough cut, Year of the Cat just felt right because I was born in the Year of the Cat in 1975. The lunar calendar for the Chinese and Koreans, it's the rabbit, and the cat is the only animal for the Vietnamese folks that's uniquely Vietnamese. And so I thought the title was kind of paying homage to my Vietnamese heritage. I found out like I'm like 98% Vietnamese from the DNA testing. And then also, like being born in 1975, the war ended then, and so I saw it as like, the beginning of like peace times, regardless of how you look at it, and for Vietnam. I solved the mystery 2 years ago in another Year of the Cat, and 2023 is the Year of the Cat, and I saw it as kind of metaphorically like another war, kind of ending, like a war that's been going on inside me for 48 years. So Year of the Cat. I don't know why I'm talking about that.
No, I think you are sharing a bit about how you've seen the story evolve, and actually that first title, "Who Loves You, Tony Nguyen," that touches a bit on, I think, the pacing and the humor in the film. And so in psychology, we oftentimes think of humor as like a way in, a way to recognize what's going on with a lighter touch, a warmer touch. And there's some really tender moments here that really tugged at us. And then they were interspersed with like Lulu's face, like rolling her eyes at all of us, or the cookie order, or things of that nature. And I'm curious if you had a really intentional approach. You're a funny guy, also.
Looking.
But like, how intentional that was to imbue humor into this.
So I don't know if this is the version that's going to live online, but what you all are seeing is like what I call the director's cut. It's the "if I could have my cake and eat it" version. And so I played scenes long, like to me long, like that when I'm in the car and Kyle's like, the Vietnamese people that live out here, da 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 da, and then like hey, give me a cookie or whatever. I just played these things long, like conversation scenes long, and so it's been great doing in-person screenings because just to hear how audiences are like responding and reacting and so where am I? I've had other filmmaker mentors that basically tell me like every frame should be intentional, and so when you're making something like like the first 5 minutes, like be able to watch that like 100 times or whatever. So I like to believe that as scrappy of a production it is, that it's made with a bit of intention.
We were just told we have one last question between us, and then we'll open it up to the audience. So thanks for tightening up your last answer that way. So yeah, so the camera can both be a shield and a mirror, you know, offer some distance between what's happening. You can see it from other perspectives, but also really exposing. And I'm curious if there were times where you wanted to just experience it without the camera, and maybe if there's any stuff on the cutting room floor that you had to really struggle with.
So, including the archival, just the home movie footage of my kids, I have over 100 hours of footage that I was working with. Part of it is like the setups, like the 2 or 3 camera setups and the such. But yeah, so there's so much that's not in the version that you all just saw. But as I mentioned, I try to be very kind of true to the search, and even if it didn't make me look so positive, like, I mean, basically going up to people and lying, like knocking on doors and saying I'm looking for my father's, you know, old Navy buddy. Like, I didn't, you know, want to just make myself like, you said the hero's journey, but I'm like this very this person without flaws or anything. So yeah, there's a lot that y'all didn't see. So.
Yes, you had to really, and you were the only editor.
Yeah.
Choosing what goes in. All right. Well, thanks for giving us that whole meal.
Yes, a self-indulgent, a little bit self-indulgent editor.
Do we have questions for the audience now? Is that what we're doing?
Yep.
Okay. Got one back there.
Hi, Tony. My family also came in 1975, and there's a whole generation of us that have been displaced by the war. And over the last years growing up, you know, you were born here, and you were raised, you know, fully in the English language. I think a lot of us in this generation who have come over have had sort of different journeys in, you know, trying to assimilate, trying to reconnect with our roots. And I wonder how finding family, that, you know, having a half-brother who's still in Vietnam and still rooted in Vietnam and not at all Vietnamese American, how that sort of changes your journey and relationship to being a Vietnamese American.
I mean, if the change, if I could describe it as like expanding, like it's the change is even my sister that lives in San Jose, she's more fluent in Vietnamese and than English, and but there's been like an expansion in how I understand like my experience as a Vietnamese American and their experience, and then very much like with the Year of the Cat, with this film, my kids are in it too, and they're actually part Chinese American, and it's when I got back from Vietnam 2 years ago, I was like, oh man, I'm gonna go to the junior college and like take some classes in Vietnamese and and then life gets in the way. I don't think my Vietnamese has gotten any better in the last 2 years. I don't give up the hope for that, but yeah. Sorry, I don't know if that's a.
Yeah, we've all re-upped that Duolingo subscription, Tony. We're all there with you. But I mean, I think another way to touch on that, it's a beautiful question, is like, so Nam Le is a Vietnamese Australian author, and he's written this beautiful line which goes, my Vietnameseness can fit into a poem. And by that he means, you know, expansive from a cosmic perspective, and also imperfect in terms of what we're left with is language. to really field it and understand it. But the possibilities are infinite, and that it can be really dangerous and damaging to kind of superimpose an idea of purity to authenticity, and that when we are self-conscious and can be self-aware of where we are on that spectrum of things, it's actually a really complex and unresolvable thing, and that's part of it.
I mean, there's a part of me that, because there's footage that you're asking, that might be on the ground. And I shot footage of me eating in Vietnam and stuff, but I'm like, oh, if they can watch Anthony Bourdain or whatever, like there's whatever, I'm not making a movie about like, hey, you go to this place to try out the pho or, whatever it is. But yeah.
More questions?
So Tony, just to say, I think that was an incredibly courageous and remarkably honest film, and to appreciate the courage that comes through in that, as well as the love. As I was watching it, I found myself thinking that it could be used in so many academic contexts, family studies, ethnic studies, psychology, and so just to wonder if you've talked to people about that possibility, or if I'm totally off.
You're not off, Joe, and thanks for your words. I'm starting to do some community screenings and university screenings, and I have 2 coming up right now. One that's at UC Davis, and another one that's happening at Indiana University in Bloomington in the humanities department. And so with distribution, I do want to make the film available for educational institutions eventually. Yeah.
Yeah, I just try to understand when did it really started. I mean, I think you said that this finished 2 years ago. It took about 5 years. But I do see the footage of your kids. They were very young. So I'm kind of trying to understand that when this really started that was the beginning when you had the footage of the kids. Was it intentional kind of things that you already had in mind? Yeah, I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah. So what I meant by starting the search was technically now it's over 5 years. I started. My mother had a mini stroke in January of 2020, and then I went back to not back to Vietnam. I went back to Indiana. It's very different. I went back to Indiana, and that's when I filmed footage of my mom looking at the birth certificate. But before I did that, I went and talked to some of my girl cousins. So they're older than me, and so the bedtime scene, conversation scene that you see with me and my kids is, you don't see me telling them on camera like, hey, Benoit had a stroke, but that made my son kind of like, hey, you should talk to Benoit before she passes away. I didn't go to film school, and I very much learned how to operate a camera pointing it at my kids. And my son is now 18, and so ever since he was born, I've been pointing a camera at him. And so that footage, but I wasn't searching for my dad then. It was very much becoming apparent that not only, it was a mini stroke that really was like, come on, Tony, like the impetus. But as you saw, there's footage there where my son's like, I think 4 years old, and asking me like, hey, who's your papa, and so it's partly becoming a parent too, and having my kids ask me questions that I used to ask my mom, and like this, so it's like, oh, this other generation of folks, my kids asking me the same kind of question. Like I didn't want to ignore them, like what my mom did or when I was little, and so what I meant by 5 years is when I actually was like, all right, I'm gonna try to really, like I feel finally brave enough to look at this, like to really not run away from, Throughout my 20s and 30s, I thought I was fine. Like that. Oh, I grew up not knowing who my dad, not having him, and I'm not the only one like that. But it's like one of those things that just stays, eats at you. And fortunately, I had the privilege to begin to do the search, to begin that 5 years ago.
Yeah, Angie has a question.
I think you already kind of touched upon this earlier.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I think you kind of touched upon this a little bit earlier. I guess my question is two-part. When you said that at some point when Z's family she told you to just stop and you hit a roadblock, and you thought that maybe the documentary had to just end with the reunion of your cousin Leanne and her half-sister, and that was it. That would have meant, what you had set out to do, you couldn't find your father. How during this very long journey, how did you sit with that uncertainty? Like knowing that was always a possibility, that the answer that you're hoping for might not be there. And the second part to that is, you were able to find, your father, even though he, passed away, and you found half siblings, but were there still kind of gaps, things that, mysteries that you feel like you never will find out about?
Yeah, I one day I'd like to. I don't have a narrative or fiction filmmaking background, but if I find some other kind of courage, I'd love to explore that. And just hearing that question, like, it makes me think like, oh, with fiction, could I, create a story where it's like I'm in dialogue with my father or something of that nature. I mean, it's one of those things where I filmed this scene with my cousin Lynn after both me and her finding out that our father isn't alive anymore. And the scene, didn't make the cut, but basically one of the questions that we explored was like, how do you deal with the loss of, not only not knowing who your father is, but now knowing that he's no longer alive. And we differ. Like, I think with anybody that goes on this, we're not going to have like the same, reasons and hopes and the such. Some overlap, but she said, well, I can't mourn a loss I never had, and I differ, and so that's something that I'm still trying to make sense of, because I only know what others have told me about my biological father, and the little pictures I have of him. Vietnamese folks tend to be, I'm generalizing here, like very spiritual and stuff. So when I was in Vietnam, everybody that, like the woman at the cemetery was like, oh, your dad is caught. You're here because your dad told you to come here. People would just say, oh yeah, you're here. Oh, it's destined that you're here. Like just random people on the street.
We believe in that though. like a random person sweeping will point you to the right monk who will reverse your fortune. Like that happens to us.
Yeah, and if I could give a little insight on that. So Kyle has a mic on him, a lavalier mic. I'm wearing a mic, and literally what you see is very much what happened. Where I was like, hey, let me get some cutaways, and I saw the little kids get on the little motorbike, and I was like, oh shit, they're like 12 years old. I was like, wow, they're so young. So I was just filming them, riding off their motorbikes. I could not hear Kyle. I just like look, and I see him talking to a monk, and that's why you see the camera works kind of, it's like all like this, and hopefully it doesn't give you a headache. But it's only in post. Or what I found out was when I showed up there, and like he's like, this is who's looking for your dad. This is who's looking for his father. And that's when, so that audio I only heard when I started editing.
Wow.
and it was just like, wow, oh, whoa, you know, and that's my favorite because just it was just live action, and but if you you know want to spend time and watch it again, you'll hear the sweeping shh, shh. So, but yeah, it's just magic. I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that happened to you. And I don't know if it's culturally that we're particularly woo. I know that both of us being Vietnamese, neither of us want to overgeneralize, right? So please don't. but you know, it is a result. It can happen when people are cleaved through lots of geopolitical matters that are happening, like war, and who are kind of cast aside from official channels of how resources are exchanged and shared, right? You kind of have to make your own luck. You got to listen to the ground. You got to see who else might know something through time. There's no way you could have gotten that info through a Skype call, right? You went there. You literally went to Vietnam.
I mean, like with your question, because I applied for a bunch of grants and I got a lot of grant rejections, but unfortunately I received some money and such. And one of the questions is like, why are you doing this? Da, 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 da. And one of the things I realized was like I was born into loss. So like my mother's loss of a country, way of life, coming here to the States since 1975. And then, my father's side not knowing at all. And so I feel like throughout my life, that's been a big question, whether it was going to end with just my cousin Lynn's story or, fortunately, like now, oh yeah, knowing that my father's not alive, but I've gained these new family members and still trying to just piece things together, piece a history and stories, so.
Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us in such an intimate, vulnerable way, a person in process experiencing this, and it just means so much, I think, for a lot of us. So thank you. I just want to give a shout out again, another round of applause for Tony for being here.
Thanks for coming on.